thought I would show you today how I do my casings for my elastics. Now I prefer diapers that have cased elastic versus elastic that's zigzagged into the seam allowance. I think that it makes it easier to replace should the need arise. It's just a completely personal preference. So I know there's a method of doing case elastic that when you go sew your diaper, what you do is you tack each end down and then you flip diaper inside out, and when you're doing the top stitching, that is when you make the casing. So you come down, for example here, you would top stitch, come down, jog over, put your needle down, and since the elastic would be in already, you would stretch it as you sewed the top stitching for the elastic casing. Now what you have to make sure of when you do that is that you don't catch the elastic in your stitching. And I was really awful at doing that. No matter what I did, I always caught my elastic in my stitching. So I came up with my own method, which I'm sure it's nothing new, but it's something that I sort of thought of doing as I was replacing a whole bunch of commercially made diapers. I'm a year into cloth diapering my second child, and I did have to replace the elastics on some diapers, commercially made diapers. And so again, this is how I sort of thought, well, maybe I can apply this to the diapers that I make. And so this is what I do. All right, so here's a diaper that I've already sewn the two layers together. It's a pocket diaper. So I've already turned it right side out. And then what I do is I mark where I want my casing to start and stop. Now, because what I like to do is I don't actually like to top stitch over the edges of my elastic, because I like to be able to replace them should the need arise easily. And that means I don't have to go and pick all this top stitching off of the elastic. So this mark that you see on my diaper body here is actually, I marked it 1/2 inch in from where the actual stop point of the elastic is, if that makes any sense. Hold on. So here's my diaper pattern, and on the actual pattern itself, these are the two marks. This is where I would tack my elastic down otherwise. So what I do is I go 1/2 inch in from either of these marks, and that's when I mark on my diaper body on the outside. And again, that's what that mark is. And so then I make a casing by just top stitching between these two marks. And I use 3/8 of an inch wide elastic for my one size diapers. And that just means that I'm going to be sewing a line 1/2 inch, well, 1/2 inch for 3/8 inch elastic, and then it would be, you'd make a casing 3/8 of an inch wide for 1/4 inch elastic. So I just sew a line 1/2 inch away from the edge between the 2 points. Alright, so here are my tools. I've got a paper clip, a small paper clip, a pin, and a bodkin. And you'll see in a minute, you're going to be like, what the what? With the paper clip? Anyway, so here we go. So I've got my diaper that I've made my casings with already. So you're going to flip it inside out. And again, I flip it inside out because I don't like to top stitch over the ends of my elastic. You might do this a little differently. If you do, you probably wouldn't need to turn it inside out. Incidentally, I also do this with my fitteds that I don't serge, and I just obviously do it all through the turning hole. Alright, so I've got my diaper turned inside out, and I don't know if you can sort of see what happens when you do the casing and you turn it inside out. You'll see this little, whoa, or not. You'll see this little pocket right here, and you can kind of get the fabric out of the way by pushing it down. So anyway, that's where that's your casing there. Alright, so let's see if I can get this to focus properly. What I like to do is feed my bodkin in first. and I sew on the fabric side. So I make sure that I put my elastic in the casing that's on the fabric side, not on the PUL side, if that even makes any sense what I'm saying. So you'll have two pockets, one on the PUL side, one on the fabric side. I know a lot of people like to put the elastic through here. This is completely personal preference, and I think the reason why they do it on this side is that it will, the diaper will kind of roll to whatever side you have the elastic on. And I think that's more important in a rolled elastic diaper than it is a case diaper. The one reason why I like to put it on the fabric side is because I feel like since the PUL is a little thinner, you've got the elastic edge rubbing up against the PUL, and perhaps, and maybe not, it might have the potential to wear the edge out faster. So this way I'm putting the edge of the elastic up against the fabric side, and that might be a little heftier. It might just wear better. Again, this is complete theory. Do not quote me, I have no scientific basis for this. All right, let's try this one more time and see if I can explain it a little better. So here's my method. Go through with my bodkin on the fabric side, or the inner side, in this case the microfleece side. Got my bodkin sticking out. Take my leg elastic. Just a quick note, you'll see my marks on my elastic. That's the start and stop points, or that's where I want to actually sew the elastic down on the start and stop points indicated by the pattern. So I figure out how long I need to make my elastic, and I actually cut an extra ½ inch on each side. So since the eye of my bodkin is a little bit smaller, I sort of have to pinch the edge to fold it in half, and then I feed it through my bodkin, pull it up a little bit, and then I have to kind of flatten it out, so I pinch it, and then okay. So I pinch it before I put it into my casing, that I make sure it's nice and flat, so I have less of a problem with twisting. And then I pull it in and through. So I get to a point, and here I just kind of like to pin it real quick for good measure so that it doesn't suck back into the casing. And I actually like to pull it through as much as I can before I tack the edge down. And I do that because I just feel like I want to have that surety that I've got it through all the way before I sew the edge down. Alright, so now I can go back here and make sure you've got the edge, the end of the elastic, you're holding it real nice and tight before taking that pin out, and then now we'll work with it. So again, I've marked where I need to tack it down, but if you remember, I started my casing ½ an inch from where it actually needs to be tacked down, from the start-stop point. So just as a guide, I line up that mark with the edge of my casing, first stitch of my casing, to sort of see where that falls, and I eyeball it, and I bring that up to where I need to sew it on. That just means I don't have to mark it a second time. Alright, so I flipped it over now. I'm actually going to sew on the PUL side. And the reason why I do that is because in the past where I sew on this side, I found that this fabric kind of comes up, and I would get it stuck in the stitching. So this way I can keep an eye on the PUL side. What's more important that I don't catch that. So I'm going to actually pin it on to the seam allowance. Go through and make sure I bridge over where my line is. And pin it back in. I'm going to leave a little bit of this pin out because as I get the first few stitches in, I'm actually going to take the pin out. so there's less of a chance of me railroading over it. So now this is gonna be really weird to you guys, and I totally understand, but I use a little paper clip, a smaller one, and I sort of slide it on before I stitch because, like I've said in the past, this fabric comes back and bunches up here. And this kind of helps me keep the fabric out of the way. So you'll see this smaller loop of the paper clip is the part I keep up because less chance of me running over it. My needle. Now, I don't ever have problems, or I haven't yet. I've done a lot of these this way. I've not had a problem yet of breaking a needle or otherwise running over it. So that's sort of my configuration, and if I flip it over you'll see that line where I need to stitch. So again, I know this is really weird and you obviously don't have to do it, but anyway, so let me get the camera situated and zoom in on the work. I'm gonna try to peel back as much as I can so that it lays flat on the machine. Put it under my needle, put my foot down, and again I go a couple stitches, remove the needle, and just go until I see the stitching that I did to put the two pieces together. And just go back and forth however many times you like. The other thing that paper clip does is it sort of tells me where I need to start and stop my stitch. So there you go, just take that off and you've got your elastic tacked on. Okay, so trim your stitches or whatever you do. So you're gonna flip it. See, I've already got this pulled through on this end. So again, I want to make sure I've got a hold of that end before I take my bodkin off. I'm pitching it really hard. And I'm going to do the same concept on this side. Where I line the mark up with the first stitch of my casing and I see where the edge of the elastic sort of falls. And then I eyeball it and move it up. And again, I'm going to flip it over. Oh, God. The zoom on this thing's driving me crazy. Again, I'm going to flip it over so that I'm sewing on the PUL side. Get everything situated. Get my fabric out of the way. Go ahead and pin. Elastic on so that your pin is perpendicular to the stitching. Again, leaving a little bit sticking out so that you can grab it as you sew. Okay, let's turn the right side out again, and there, beautifully cased elastic that actually moves in the casing. Which is something I can't accomplish doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this baby up and show you the final product. Alrighty, here it is. All finished up. Just want to note again, this is what I do to finish it, or trying to explain that. I leave a gap between the end of the elastic and the top stitching. Again, just so it's a little easier in my experience.